continuous data level auditing system.
The claim to fame of this paper is took 10 years and 7 months to get it published. Rejected twice in accounting review, once in the audit job.
So this is the content of the paper. It gives brief introduction and shows the contributions to the literature. Then it shows the design and implementation of the continuous data level auditing system. Moves the estimation of continuous equations, and lastly shows the comparison in the effectiveness of all detection of these different models and the conclusion. So this research note develops continuous data level auditing system. It uses a large sample data from a major healthcare provider, although it doesn't show which healthcare provider it is, has several 100,000 employees and a multi-million-dollar organization. Contributions of this paper to the literature is developed the framework for the continuous auditing of the business process. It's also previous literature does not distinguish it, but it distinguishes two types of irregularities, exceptions, and anomalies. And this research bases analysis on highly disaggregated data. They achieve aggregation level on a daily basis. And it uses several models and compares these models depending on their accuracy. And it also simulates and evaluates the unique capability of continuous auditing to initiate identified anomalies in pseudo time. So previous literatures discussed continuous auditing, but the modern approach was pioneered by two group of scholars, first Gruber and Murphy. Approach to these continuous auditing through embedded audit modules, while Vasarhelyi and Haller pioneered these as a control and monitoring layer. Since then, literature on continuous auditing expanded vastly. Some papers cover technical aspects of continuous auditing, some cover examinations of economic drivers of continuous auditing, and all papers also discuss how these continuous auditing, if applied, would change the current practices of audit procedures. One thing one thing that differs this paper from other literature, as this paper utilizes highly disaggregated level data for analytical procedures, while most other papers use less aggregated data, less disaggregated data. About analytical procedures, there are many, vast majority of papers in the audit that discuss the extensive research on analytical procedures. They use like the financial ratios or the regression modeling, and their error rates are mostly between 15 and 50%. But again, only a few papers use a research that's based on highly disaggregated data. And one other thing is this paper uses a vector autoregressive model, which is highly used in other disciplines of business, but it's not widely used in auditing, at least till this paper was published. So let's move to design and implementation of the continuous data level auditing system. So it mostly starts from, this is the business part of the procedures, and the upper part is the auditing part of the procedures. So it mostly divides auditing procedures to two steps. First one is the automatic transition verification, and the second one is the automate analytical monitoring through continuity equations. The objective of this model is to provide something close to real-time assurance, and in this case, one important thing, it will be discussed a little later, to have this business data warehouse. But the problem arises that this business data warehouse receives data from several departments or the parts of the business, and as these parts are mostly somewhat independent from each other, they have their own information needs, and they have their own access goals to the information. So what they call is data lacks centralized and automated controls. And these systems they help are multiple drive from multiple legacy systems. So
for firms with ERP system, they don't need to do the integration because they're already in.
Yes, if that ERP systems are used by all these departments, sure. But even currently, what they do is well, for SAP, if they only use the payables, probably procurement, receivables. But I've seen many corporations that use the ERP, Oracle, or SAP, and they also use some other softwares, particular part of, for example, Ariba for the receivables or payables, and the human resources have their own small programs for data. But it will be hard to kind of move data from this to the ERP system and to the data economy. That's another part. So, one important thing is that in traditional audit, what they usually do is they apply analytical procedures first to identify the most risky areas. Then, depending on that, they derive sample out of the population. But in this, what they do is first they check all the records to the business rules, which will be translated, and then they use the analytical monitoring. It's kind of twisted around. So the first step of the verification of transactions part is the business process. The rules should be identified and formalized as transaction integrity and validity constraints. So it should set, should there be any weekend transactions allowed, there should be check amounts that should be, has limits assigned. Should there be authorized vendors or the sales agents that can make a sale? So this kind of stuff. And any record that violates this business rule is called an exception. And it's different from anomalies because anomalies are dependent on the larger part of data, while this exception is mostly between this business rule and this transaction itself. So every exception that is generated should alarm the continuous audit system, and the internal continuous audit system should send these to appropriate party for resolution. And after all data transactions are verified, data are screened for anomalies by analytical monitoring component, but the analytical monitoring component to model requires 4 choices to be made. First, you should choose your metrics, the business process metrics. Which metrics you want to use? The items quantities, traditional dollar amounts, maybe hours, maybe time period. The second metric, second choice to be made is what's the level of your aggregation, data aggregation. We'll see there is going to be a trade-off between aggregation level of data and detection ability of the continuous version audit. And another metric, another choice that should be made is particular analytical procedure status model to estimate stable relationship between business procedure metrics. And the last decision to be made is what's your acceptable range for these metrics. For example, if they say that they no weekend transactions are allowed, and your range probably only weekdays. We talked about the business data warehouse. It's data integration point for most disparate legacy systems. As this continuous audit is data-oriented, cannot be cost-effectively applied unless company holds this business data warehouse. Because there is a need after these alarms, even if the auditor himself gathers all this data from different points, there's a need at the end to go back to these points where the data was originated from and alarm the responsible party. So the upload of business process data to data warehouse usually takes place on a daily basis. The availability of the disaggregated process data makes it possible for auditors to access any raw, unfiltered, and disaggregated data. So the data description of the company it was used, again, it was a major healthcare company with close to 200,000 employees and it's a multi-billion in assets. The period they used is 9 months from October 2003 to 2004, and they also state in the notes that although this data was a little older, it did not much affect to the performance level of data.
So when I just think about these continuous auditing and review steps, what I think the most is that visualization is a very important part here. So when we use like Tableau, when we put in like some kind of data, then Tableau itself recommend us to use this kind of like a graph type or these kind of bar types or other kind of visualization types. Is there any other business-related programs which has embedded that kind of like embedded analytics?
I don't know if any auditing software has an embedded analytical procedures that has the anomaly detection. That's what you need, right?
It could be anomaly. It could be like just kind of finding out for some layers or regular space, right? Actually, even though that is the normal data, it would be useful for us like to visualize it. But before that, the program could just like find out the best fit of the graph or visualize tools for it.
I will speak a little bit louder. There's difficulty.
Oh yeah. So when we use Tableau, when you put the data in there, Tableau itself recommends us to use this kind of bar type or graph type or this visualization tool because it has some kind of embedded analytics in there. So when you just put in there, and we just need to click on like columns and like you want to use this row data, then itself like recommend us you can use this and this and this because it has embedded analytics in there already. I think that it'll be very good for accounting or monitoring these steps. When you put in the data there, then if they have some kind of embedded analytics in there, then it could just give us like, you can use this tool, you can use this tool, you can just visualize like this. Then it's gonna save us a lot of time for it. Because Tableau is good for it. The reason that why we are using Tableau is that we can save time for it and we can make a great visualization within like a few minutes. So I was wondering whether we have any kind of like those kind of like programs, yeah, with embedded analytics.
You know, Tableau is an instrument of visualization.
Yes.
And it helps you to do what we call exploratory data analysis.
Yes.
But what he is doing here, what Jiao's dissertation was the other way, was formalization to equations.
Yeah.
If Alex had eliminated the tail end of this paper, the automatic correction, the paper would have got it pretty early. It's just too much complexity for one paper. Once you have these equations, you might use Tableau to help. But a priori, I don't know how you could use EDA for this. Maybe.
So I guess your question is if visualization is used in audit, or if there's software that, like the recommender system, provides different types of analytics, which could be visualization or something else. I don't think that was part of Lou's dissertation. I think, right, Professor, the recommender system that provides like a list of different apps that can be used by the auditor. So that's an idea that's out there, but I don't think it's been formalized yet. But auditors do use Tableau, as far as we know. We talked to some of the firms, and a lot of them use Tableau and ClickView, but they use it more for, I guess, to see trends or to see if there's a debit in payables, which it would be something unusual to see, but it's not necessarily used to collect audit evidence at this point.
Another difficulty with creating, I think, the general audit procedure that's formalized is that different companies have different company data needs, right? And their transaction record differs from each other. So I don't think you can kind of universally produce some audit procedure formalized that can be applied to all companies at the same time. Right? With Tableau, of course, first you need to go through your information availability, you know what needs you have from this audit procedure.
I think Tableau is an EDA type of tool. Okay, visualization is in general EDA. We are trying to suggest visualization as a set of scripts to support the audit. That's the thing she's doing. It's an interesting idea. I think we should pay a visit to Professor Kogan and have this discussion. He doesn't bite. In the call this morning, he was actually talking about meeting the data up a little bit before we do anything, correct?
Yes. Because he always gets enthusiastic when he sees the irregularities in the data that are not expected. Okay, so these are two main components of the continuous auditing. First, transaction verification. Second one is business process-based analytical procedures. So the first part mainly checks every transaction to every business rule that's formalized. And the second part is the use segments of data to detect anomalies. So three key business processes that were identified in this company that was used in this paper, ordering, receiving, and voucher payment. First, before going to the second part, as a part of first transaction verification, errors data that were removed had two types. The first one has the data integrity violations, and the second one is the revelation integrity violations. The first data integrity violations might have some logical values in some fields. For example, negatively ordered quantities or zero amounts, while other fields other than zero amounts. Referential integrity violations are you have a transaction at one part of your data set, but the corresponding transactions are not available in other parts. For example, there was a payment made for some purchase, but actually this purchase or the data transaction was not available, so one half of the data, the other half is missing. So these kind of data records were removed, and also non-business day records were also deleted before going to the next process, because even if they were left in this system, in this data to system check, the system would have generated them as alarms, and because they violate business rules. One of the business rules was to allow only weekday transactions. The next part is the analytical part. So there were created several models to detect anomalies. The business process metric calculated over a subset of transactions corresponding to intervals along some important business procedure dimensions. So anomalies arise when observed values of metrics result in residuals that fall outside of the acceptable range, and anomalies associated with the subset of transaction. Therefore, resolution of this anomaly is not straightforward, while in the first step, when business rules were applied, the business transaction itself detects which business transaction violated the business rule. In the analytical procedures part, it just shows in which case you have an anomaly, but it requires further investigation from the auditor to find out which transaction it is and who's responsible to correct that mistake. So next part is before moving to continuity equations, the important part is the choice of business process metrics. So I think they used dollar amounts for orders and the quantity of items for receiving, and again dollar amounts for vouchers. Data aggregation has its own advantages and disadvantages. For example, if your data is too much aggregated, your anomalies, your data is has a less variance, and in which case the anomalies are hard to detect. But if your data is too much disaggregated, you will have too much anomalies, which produces too many alarms, which requires too much effort from auditor to go and investigate each one. So below you can see the summary statistic of these three variables: mean, standard deviation, minimum, and maximum. So overall parameters of continuity equation estimation is there were 4 models used, and for each model, what they use is online model learning protocol. In these, they use several segments of data to train the algorithm or the equation. Then they add another segment of data and they go through whole procedure. Then they another segment of data and go through another part of the procedure. So 2 points are if this data is too small, they don't remove older data from the data set when they add new data. But when it's sufficiently large, this sliding window method can be applied with removing older data when new data is added.
I have a question about that. So
This is, I think, is just your inputs, right?
But inputs should be observation 1 to 100 or 1 to 100. I don't know why. So in my understanding, for example, the first one, they first use the observation from 1 to 100 to
Yes.
estimate the model and then predict the next one. And then what is the use to put observation number 1 or 2 or 3 from the website?
Well, that's what I thought. These are these were inputs from the data that gave you, right? It's already
Yeah, it's
in the
already
system itself. I don't know if this refers to there's 3 of these columns, order, voucher, and the what was receiving part. That's a good question.
Could you repeat your question?
My question is, according to the paper, the system will first use, for example, observation 1 to 100 to estimate the model, and then they will predict the next the next value of the 101. Then I don't know why we still need to use observation 101 or 2 or 3 on the website. So I don't know why they put that part on the web.
Where we have 101 there?
Yeah.
Or why we are creating 101?
I don't know either. I never really paid any attention to the little numbers in there. I think it's a good question for Professor Kobe.
Observation.
We looked at so many versions of this paper. I can't believe how many we did. Okay. Can I ask another question? Can we develop these continued equations retroactive to a machine learning model? I don't know. I just was kind of wondering. You know, I never liked this thing about transactions after hours, before hours. It's kind of very incidental evidence. I like continued equations, and I like process mining, because you kind of look on how the process really is. And maybe it can be combined. The other question here on this paper that is a question that is very common in analytics is what is the adequate degree of aggregation for any kind of model? Meaning obviously we always want more data than less data, but you have daily data or transaction data might create too much variation in the data to predict. Sometimes better to make it weekly, normalize it, let's say by cycle or something like that. And I think it's the purpose of the data and the way we do it. Something needs to be taught. But Alex very well focused here on looking at frequency. And recently, I think in our course, he was talking about looking at frequency of data for analysis. We're talking about daily data.
Yes, he's actually supportive for the more disaggregated data, like daily data rather than
Because disaggregated always can be aggregated.
Yes.
But aggregated cannot be disaggregated.
Yeah, that's what we used always. You can always aggregate, but cannot disaggregate. Okay, the first model, they use a simultaneous equation model, where they perceive daily aggregates of order amount as exogenous variable, and the daily aggregates of receiving quantity and the payment amount as endogenous variables. So they modeled as order was made, then after some time lag, it was received, and after another time lag, it was paid with a voucher. But I paid attention to these coefficients. Then I realized that because it was switching from dollar to quantity and from quantity to back to dollar again, that's why we had to do the reverse.
When I was reading the paper, they say for this kind of model, they can only have one independent variable. But why is that? Why they put more independent?
One independent variable?
Yeah.
Because I think, I might be wrong, but I think it depends on the logic of this model. And it puts these as steps of business procedures. So you have the ordering, then you have a receiving quantity, then you have a payment, right? Whatever ordered quantity kind of identifies how much you will receive and how much you will pay. That's why I think the beginning point is the most independent, and everything else after that is dependent on that beginning point. Okay, so R scores for these equations are 0.74 and 0.71, which shows good fit for the data. One problem with implementing this model is these lag estimations require some effort from auditors. That's why it also might be error prone. So simultaneous equation models is the simplest model. Each variable can only depend on a single length value of the other variable. But again, the problem with it is that it requires a little more effort from auditors. So next model is the vector autoregressive model. Again, like before, was discussed before in the previous model, data was separated into two sets, training set and pulling out set for testing. SAS-Wehrmacht's procedure was used to estimate large VAR model. Initially, models suffered from overfitting, and most parameters were insignificant. Then they decided to go through a stepwise procedure where you start with all parameters, input all parameters in the model and start eliminating them after each step, whichever is insignificant. And before that, you need to put your threshold for your p-value. And as you can see, three parameters were left for order and receive, and only two parameters left for receive and order for voucher. And as after these procedures, a stepwise procedure were applied several times, it was not. They changed the name of this model from VAR to the subset VAR because they went through several procedures to eliminate insignificant parameters. So, one problem they mentioned is it requires effort and judgment from auditor to reduce this model from VAR to subset VAR, which can be a little troublesome for auditors. And what they proposed is to use a Bayesian VAR model, which may come handy for auditors, and for comparison purposes, they also include this VAR model in the comparison table.
Please go back.
Yeah.
So for the three AR solutions, the first one is the order made by an type T.
of, I think order was in dollar amounts, right? So I think what they do is they were dependent on the order amount in dollar 4 periods earlier, and the order amount that was 14 periods earlier, and receiving amount at 6 periods earlier.
I'm curious about how they do this, although they illustrated in that diagram, but
No, actually,
I'm
this is
curious
just
about their initial model estimation. So, do they just pull everything together? Like, for example,
the paper itself does not specify
they only give us
what
the results.
what just shows the SAS or MAX procedure was used. Hopefully, we can find out what's the SAS or MAX
Yeah,
procedure.
you can look at Jiaowu's dissertation. Can you imagine Jiaowu graduated, took 10 years for this to be published? And it would be a catastrophe if he wasn't. He was at the University of Massachusetts, but now not main campus, second campus, and he is a very good guy there, so they gave him tenure. He's department chairman, etc. So it wasn't a catastrophe, but 10 years, can you believe this?
The next model is the model which is mostly similar to all of us, I think, is the linear regression model. And in this model, they just use order and receiving as independent variable, and use only voucher as a dependent variable. And they also use time lags, and while defining time lags, they use the mode, and they assume that there is a 2-day time lag between the order and voucher, and the 1-day time lag between the receive and the voucher.
When I was reading this, I was very curious, like all of they're using timestamp. So, but the real like voucher and ordering process it's a voucher. It's not a voucher, it's a process. So it's not like timestamp.
It's a process, but for example, this is a mini process, right? You have an order, then it moves to the receiving and last payment, right?
So it's not time.
No, although this is a process, it requires some time lag before it reaches the second procedure, right?
Yeah.
And most of the time, it requires some time. Usually, it's not that very before it moves. For example, you are ordering usual, let's say, materials to your production and the supplier, and you can roughly estimate how much lag you have after you order to your supplier certain materials and until it delivers and until you pay.
But it's not exactly the process. It's just their definition of time.
Well, I think time is the most accurate measure in this.
All transaction numbers, different numbers.
Okay, well here I'll give you an example. I used to calculate painting materials for produced cars, right? And this production is 250,000 annually, quarter million, right? And we used to order it from a local paint company, and they used to deliver daily. And non-stop.
Just in time manufacturing.
Yes, non-stop. They just dump
And what
it to
happens
the-
if there is a glitch in that manufacturing?
Well, they usually one resolution for this is they usually have a aside just in case. Not too much,
Boeing
but a
had this
little
problem.
bit. Yes.
Boeing was sourcing from 7 different places for the Dreamliner, and I don't remember which country had some storm or whatever, and they had to stop the production of the Dreamliners because they didn't have. Of course, it's very good to do lean manufacturing. You don't keep inventory, you don't occupy capital. But the black swan they are big. So, and also many of these international manufacturers double source.
Yeah.
Always double source.
And GM also had this in their concept. They have their own little stock. It's not just the case, but it's enough for around 1 day. And they refresh it every, let's say, week or a month. And on the side, the local supplier also had some just in case their production failed, right? So whenever, so it's two-step safety, right? Whenever they consume because of the error in the production, the first step, they immediately start looking for another supplier before they can just consume up the stock levels of the supplier.
You know, I was in Singapore teaching last week, and this guy was in the power company there in Singapore, and their power is all driven by gas, natural gas. And basically they have suppliers that control the gas wells by satellite. And these are underground grass wells, and underwater grass wells. So they have it like distributed in the Malaysian, in the Singaporean Ocean, and etc. Different suppliers, and by satellite they monitor this thing. And I was just thinking, imagine Hurricane Maria goes by that thing, what's going to happen? And those things are very thin power, gas supply, thin lines. So I just said, wow, this is modernity. And just the other thing is, I don't know if you follow the Iranian centrifuge problem. Is the Iranian centrifuge problem was the U.S. decided to sabotage the Iranian centrifuge to create the nuclear bomb, right? And so what they did is they accelerated them to the point of destruction, and they had no access directly. What they had is USB ports, and so they got some spy, someone to go in there and put the USB device. Of course, it was speculative, but I'm pretty sure. And the centrifuge just exploded because they got accelerated. And so just imagine in the ocean of Singapore, someone taking over the control of those satellites and interfering. Now they say that they are passive, meaning the control is by the gas companies. There are different suppliers that are companies. They only monitor it. But then I asked them, is there a capability to control if the company wants? They say yes. So just imagine, these things are so scary. And you know, this thing, look at this, 3 dimensions here, and none of these have been properly examined in the literature. And I think this was one of the problems with the paper. The paper was too far-fetched. First thing is the frequency of the data. Daily, hourly, monthly, yearly. Okay, the second here is different selection of models. And the third thing is the lag of the data. And you know, the lag, you know, you see some econometrics measures in the market literature that have lags. But there hasn't been really methodological studies thinking carefully about, meaning these productions have lags by definition, okay? Meaning it takes so many days to transport something from here to there. Takes some, AT&T took 20 days to finish a bill. Took 2 hours to send out. This was all originated from we did continuity equations at Bell Labs. And the guy who worked with us was a solid state physicist. That's where the idea came. And so here is model choice, lag choice, frequency of data choice. Just to begin, 3 parameters of definition. All of this needs tremendously methodological studies, and would be very interesting to do, not only in the audit area, but also in the financial reporting area. Let me ask you a question. can you represent better the company's functioning by balance sheet and income statement or by a set of equations?
Usually the set of equations takes into account the balance sheet. The set of equations that people usually make in market literature usually takes into account balance sheets and income statements as inputs.
Yeah, that was the reason. That's why I was raising this issue. I usually represent, let's say, the value chain is production, sales, just to make it very simple. And you create some type of relationship with you produce and you sell everything, and then some of it is cash, some of it's receivables, whatever. And you can kind of pick up relationships here, and like I think Alex has T minus 19 or whatever that we had there, creating, and this was basically historically kind of what was happening. The HCA was the company, and what we modeled there was one warehouse and I think 9 hospitals, and creating continuity equation. This in the AT&T stuff was the switch. The switch with static dates on the switch. We broke it down. We put in database, and then broke these things down into 5 elements. And then I think out of here we issued the bills. Okay, and then we created equations between these guys. Okay, now a balance sheet model is really a static model. However, you could, for example, calculate ratios between them and use the ratios as a way to predict it. Ke-Shing and Xuan and Yunsen are trying to break down break down segment reports into pieces and try to use that as segmentation methods. Now, the question, going back to the question I asked, is this is a very static model. This is a model developed in first time in Summa Mathematica 1492. And this thing served basically for managing loans, for managing inventory, and managing cash, and to distribute profits. They didn't call it profit, but that's the way, that's what it served. It was a static model. Now the modern enterprise is a very dynamic production model, and it uses a whole set of variables around it. And we're still trying to represent the modern enterprise like this. And there is no surprise that these things are very obsolete. The question I asked is, could you figure out a way to, and maybe you need 10 different equations for each segment. Maybe you need different lags for the different processes. Maybe you need different lags for different seasons on different processes. You know, how detailed and intricate you get is a whole different thing. But my basic question is, if you create this kind of equations, do you represent business better or worse? Or is it too complicated for Mr. Accountant down in the accounting shops of let's say AT&T to understand it? And then the other question is, do you really need it to understand it? Meaning these days you kind of put a module in place, and all what you have to understand is the output, and assume that some system analyst knew what he was doing. Yeah.
So actually, I asked you about this question like a few months ago, making a graph.
I don't remember anything a few months ago.
At that time, like I did not know much about that graph steps. Actually, they are using a matrix to represent a graph. science, like your advanced database course. And just the question just told us that the real thing that's going on in that field is they are want to develop. They develop it. They are using graph database. So in the database.
So that's why your question about Tableau came?
Yeah, all like the things. But however, now like they can also store graph in database. The graph, they could just search it and also like get into it and sort it into everything they wanted.
Graphs and tables are interchangeable.
Yeah.
It's just a question of perception.
Yeah, so making like metrics or just metrics.
Yeah, but the question I'm asking, and the reason I'm asking is, might motivate some of my young colleagues in financial accounting to maybe think about a different way to representing business that is more explanatory. Okay, I know we are still kind of constrained about the rules of the SEC and etc. But if we could show that different forms of measurement are much more revealing to stockholders and other stakeholders, this really, meaning just what we did here, okay, certainly was a much better form of modeling. It was very clear at that time that it modeled very well. Okay, so just think about it. So the variables that I said that in this paper is that the time variable, called frequency if you want to call it, the model choice, lag, and I'm sure we can add 2 or 3 other very interesting models for it. I wonder if at that time we had applied some more detailed machine learning models to this, if we would have come up with the same set of equations or not. Well, we didn't have 5 more minutes, correct? Sorry about that.
So at the end of the paper, they give a comparison of these modules, and as you can see, the most accurate was the linear regression model, which is the most explicit, and second was the subset of this bar, followed by B bar, and last was simultaneous equation model. But one important thing is these mean absolute percentage errors, right? Mean absolute percentage errors. All of them had a very likely numbers, overall 40%, which shows the robustness of this model. If something was wrong, it could be very different from each other. And variance also differs from each other only except the simultaneous equation model. And the prediction accuracy of these continuous equation candidate models, there were 2 important points to mention. False positives and false negatives. False positives would consume more time of the error auditor for nothing, and false negatives would be worse, just not detecting in the anomaly in this case. And to compare, to measure how much false positive and false negative could each model has, they seeded errors at 5 different magnitudes, and showed how much of these error each model catched and how much positive, false positive and false negatives that they had. So before doing these error measures, they introduced what's pseudo real-time error correction, and they claim that this depends on the business cycle, business nature of this company, and they tip to this to be a daily in this case, but they also mentioned that most literature till this point had been only monthly if it was segregated data. And lastly, they compare these three tables, and in the first table, they compare different models at the different error magnitudes with their false positives and false negatives, and they also go through two different approaches. First one is the error connection, second one is the non-error correction. In the first one, they corrected the error. After it was detected, the second one, they just left it without correcting the same. And one important point in all of these tables is overall, in the minor error magnitude, most models could not detect it, but when the magnitude of error increased from 2 to 4%, it starts to detect all of the anomalies, if not most. So in the last two tables, they checked these error detection considering different aggregations. In the previous table, they tried these through daily aggregation level, and they compared it to weekly aggregation level. And two approaches, they seeded errors in this case. In the best case, they seeded error randomly to any working day. In the worst case scenario, they seeded errors in the in all days separately equal. And the best result was achieved in the weekly best case scenario. I think this is all. This paper contributes to the literature with showing how to implement continuous audit model and how it can be developed, procedures, and also 4 different models for anomaly detection part, and the particular choice of model, cross-candidate, the continuous version model are less important because they mostly achieve the same rate of the results.
So you guys like this paper?
And when I was reading it, I think I can feel Professor Koga's way of writing.
Yeah, you can hear him talking.
Yeah.
This paper has a Russian accent. Actually has a Chinese accent too, because Jia Wu did an enormity of work on this. Poor Jia Wu. He is something with this. But you know, this paper was written 12 years ago or something like that. Frequency. In retrospect, we should have taken all that error correction stuff out and written a different paper. It would have got 2 good publications, and we should have had a bigger fight with accounting review and get it accepted. And they would have published it eventually. If you look at the Peral's paper that we accepted last year, it wasn't particularly better than this, was actually worse. And the other conclusion I have on this, I wrote myself a note here. I think we need to go back to this, maybe not this data, but do this again with more modern machine learning technology. Are we ready to go to? Thank you. You are the right guy for this paper.
This understanding where all the accounts line up, and it's starting to give a bit of a sense of the information. And it's telling me right away when it's been completed and how it's going to be working. So let's look at the first thing, how it maps the accounts. So as it goes through and it dynamically ingests that data and it understands it and tries to look at how this data is formulated, it says, hey, because I know what this format is, I can start putting things into the right hierarchical view. As you would imagine, it's going to look and see where the accounts line up, your assets, liabilities, expenses, revenue, etc. And it actually goes through and takes the opportunity to place it into the spot it thinks it needs to be. Now, sometimes you've already done a lot of work with your account hierarchies and with your roll-up, so just use the purple button, upload account list, and you don't have to look at this again. Because what the system will do is it will dynamically understand where you place accounts, and even if you add new accounts, it's going to understand where it is in the process and attribute it to the right level of information. At any point in time, you can run some quick reviews to see anything that was unspecified, meaning the system didn't know what to do with it, but the smarts are usually pretty good. We have very few of those. At the same time, you may have numerous accounts that are named the same thing, but one might be your foreign bank account, and one might be your domestic bank account, so you might manually change those. Over time, you may add new accounts, as I mentioned. The system will dynamically try to put them into the right place based on the information and based on the context it's already seen. So without even seeing that data file, it's immediately going through and pushing the information into a hierarchical view of the data. What it then does is it goes through and runs through all of our control points. So in this case, it's analyzing the general ledger, and it's going to run through all of our control points. There are 30 different algorithms that are being processed against when it looks at every single transaction. And based on that, it takes all of the scoring that it has available to the data, whether it was a weekend post, whether it passed one of our machine learning algorithms like expert score, and it essentially adds to that score. And the minute it goes over a mark of 50, it gets red and says it's a high risk. Anything between medium, between 30 and 50 is bucketed into the medium. And anything in the low risk is obviously below 30. So it's taken all the information, in this case, over 13,000 entries, and it's processed them and said, I think I know where some of the issues are. And it's bucketed them very quickly and easily for me to see in this nice high visibility dashboard, and telling me that, hey, you've got $2 million worth of flow in high risk, equating to 6 transactions or less than 1% of the ledger, and it's got 12 million inside of medium risk. And then we've got 34 million just in the low risk. It doesn't only tell you how many transactions or how much flow of value going through those accounts and through those risky buckets. It also tells me where and tells me how. So I can drill in as detailed as I want, look at parts of time, and understand exactly where the issues may be. So when I look at the information, I can see that I might have a bit of a challenge in this historical view between week 50 and week number 2 in the crossover of the year. But we don't just want to give you that view, we want to give you a view that is very unique to the AI auditor and not done in any other solution, which is to give you a risk first that tells you exactly where the issues have been found by the account structure you've given it. Or in this case, it's dynamically created. So it goes through and it tells me, based on this nice, wonderful, bright, crisp green, that accounts receivable is actually quite healthy. Maybe I don't need to spend as much time on that as I thought I did. But within my asset cluster, I actually have something that's trending toward yellow. So I might need to look at this, which is equipment. And obviously, most concerning, like anything, when you're driving a car, you see an amber or a red light, you're going to stop and hesitate. So where is this? Within expenses, director's fees, management salaries, and bad debt. And so what you have here is a quick visual that targets exactly where you need to focus. So again, regardless of where you are within the Office of Finance, within the CFO's office, whether you're part of the audit committee, or whether you're an external auditor, this system can very quickly draw you to the attention for that business where the issues are. And again, as I remind you about the type of data we bring in, this can be coming from any of the 500 different ledgers that are out there in the wild. We connect directly to QuickBooks Online, to NetSuite, from Oracle, and to Sage's Intact, and more are coming every day. And we can bring all that data in and give you a very quick synopsis of where the challenges may lie. Now again, our accounting professionals went through and got their designation not to become Excel jockeys or scripters. So they need the best tools they can to then investigate all these challenges that I'm showing you here. So we can quickly go and look in the details, either through the interactive dashboard or just looking at the detailed table, and we can understand which transactions have which types of risks. Now, depending on your business, you're going to run this differently. Every accounting group seems to have its own little flow on how they like to look at things. For me, I like to look at all of these top risks and interrogate them very quickly, just to get that bird's eye view of what's going in to our system and what's going into that risk weighting, in this case of 53 for this journal. What I can see immediately, just visually, is that we've captured the memo field or the comments field right from the ledger, and I can see that it's saying that the job was canceled. And of course, being the smart accountant that you likely are, I probably look back and say, oh, it was posted on the 5th. Well, hey, that's right after a period close and after a year close. That's an odd thing to happen, to have a job canceled so quickly after the year end. So maybe there's an issue here. But even if that didn't distract you and you found this one in one of your samples, what we're showing you is even more detail as to why it is a potential anomaly or issue. And in this case, we're telling you that it had a reporting, it was a manual entry. There was a reporting adjustment made to this. It looks to be related to transaction journal 2949. It's obviously got the suspicious keyword of cancel. And these are all rules and lexicons that you can enhance the weighting on and focus on in some of your testing. You can add to the library. All of that can happen. But really, the row that I'm concerned with is the next row down, which is making sure that we see where all the machine learning algorithms scored us. So in this case, let's talk about the expert score. So the expert score was designed working with CPAs from Canada and the United States mostly, with a little bit of work from a good friend of ours out in the Netherlands, along with some folks that are part of the ACSE, Certified Fraud Examiners, and Certified Financial Crime Specialists. And the reason for that is we wanted to ensure that we looked at data and the financials specifically in a variety of different ways. And we were teaching our AI how the experts would review ledgers. So when something like this triggers high, it usually gives us a little bit of a pause. As I click on it, I can see which specific line is worried about. So it's worried about account 12030, one of my receivable lines, and it's worried about taxes charged on sales. I may want to get a little bit more detail. So back to the point that why this is award-winning. AI and machine learning, it doesn't need to be a black box. We can give you all sorts of context as to exactly what's going on in a particular piece of the business. And in this case, I could look at the information and say, well, it scored 67% out of 100 on our expert score, and there are 128 other transactions which also represented a higher than we'd like risk, or 4% of the ledger. So very quickly, depending on your role within the accounting profession and why it is you're looking at some of the data, this gives you as much context as it can as to what's going on within the solution, within the financial data, and the solution is trying to guide you to other things that are relevant and interesting. So that's a little bit about our expert score, something that is based on supervised learning techniques that allow us to continue to refine based on feedback coming from our experts that we partner with to design the system. Some of the other ones that are really curious to me are things like outliers and flow analysis and rare flows. So what are these all about? Well, again, our goal is to make AI explainable to the accounting professional. So when you look at the description, you can read a little bit about what some of these are. But let's take rare flows for a second and click on it and find out which row, which is all of them. So imagine, if you will, you go looking at your books, you're looking at what the bookkeepers have been doing for payables, in this case actually receivables, and you all of a sudden see that they're starting to charge different accounts than they normally did. Well, if you had all the time and energy in the world to look at every single receivable transaction, you might find something like this, where they're actually charging more accounts than they normally do. Well, why not let an AI-based system like the AI Auditor do this work for you? So it's identifying that there's unusual flows for this ledger. So again, think of this. This isn't just, every company looking at it as a baseline or as a benchmark. Are you better or worse? It's specific to your business. Looking at flow analysis, highlighting the 3 accounts. 2 of the same accounts as the expert score flag, but a third one, the sales of cement. And what this is doing is same concept. Well, how does the monetary flow between these accounts normally happen? How outlandish or anomalous is this? Well, again, almost 2/3 anomalous. And there's only 7 other transactions in this ledger that have this type of monetary flow challenge. And then, of course, we might just want to know, well, what are the outliers? Which ones do I really need to focus on? And it goes back to those same 2 that the expert score triggered on. So by using machine learning, we're able to give you a very good diagnostic of every single transaction that you might want to look at. We can look at all the things that didn't trigger, at all the things that we felt were safe about this transaction. And at the end of the day, you get to see all of the information in a very quick and easy to review. So let's go back to the dashboard for a second. We're going to come back in and look at a few things. Let's go and look at, for instance, all the transactions that are hitting against our operating expenses. So very quickly, it took me to an ordered list, high to low and risk of my transactions. And now what I get the opportunity to do is if I want to click a sample that will help me actually focus my energy, I might have limited numbers of resources, I might only want to look at a certain number of these to satisfy my testing. There you go with 20 of them. What the system will do is it will naturally select anything that's in high risk based on the algorithmic view of risk. Take 60% of the medium, up to 60%, and then the balance out of low. So this generates a much more intelligent sample for you because it's automatically targeting high and medium with a slightly stronger weighting than low. Every transaction still has the opportunity of being selected, so obviously that's good from an audit standards perspective, but now it gives me the ability to review all of these things and push them through. You'll notice a new column called status with some open. This now puts it into an audit plan for me, and I can now go through and start assigning those tasks to different individuals that are working with me. Let's just grab one here, go ahead and assign it. We'll ask one of our product managers here at MindBrid, Stefan, to take a look. And Stefan is a very fast worker, but let's give him a couple of days. So Stefan now has a task that will notify him on his screen if he's already logged in that there's something for him to do. And he'll come and he'll take a look at this and decide whether it's in fact normal or whether it needs to be flagged as an anomaly. All of the interactions that you use, that you do within the solution, anytime you hit one of these action buttons, you add comments, you add details, all of them are tracked. And they're used as part of the system's reinforced learning models. So I can leave a comment for Stefan, I can leave notes, and all of that is now available. So I can take this entire thing, package it up, find the CPA firm, deliver some of that information maybe to the client so that they can see the result. If I'm the client, I can share this information with my auditor to show them the things that we've actually done. So all of that happens in the audit plan. And then ultimately, all within that same window of just loading and accessing the data, I have the ability to download my income statement, a bunch of profitability and performance indicator reporting that crosses any time horizon that you've set into the solution for that organization. So very, very quickly, you get to see all of that data right there ready for you. Now let's take a look at accounts payable for a second. I'm sure some of you are wondering, well, what other types of analysis are available based on the information that's present? Well, as you can see, we can have lots of different subsidiaries or organizations or clients, depending on what your role is within accounting. And it will tell you exactly what data's already been loaded. And within that, it'll give you the same types of breakdown for every single type of ledger or subledger. Now, what gets unique when we start looking at things like payables is obviously we want to show you more than just the account ratios. We want to start showing you how much issue we have across all of our different vendors. So you can see all of my wonderful made-up names: Kelly Cook, Ward, LLC, Miller Carl, Sawyer Group. And we can see, based on their size, how much monetary flow is going to those various vendors in my payable. Within that, I also have a risk breakdown that overlays it, which means the darker shade of green, the happier we are, the lower the risk is. The darker shade of red, clearly, we're more concerned that there might be some challenges. Again, we run all of the data through our pipeline, and it does a long number of analysis with accounts payable, so 22 different algorithms that get run. And within that, we then attribute the same type of concept of risk score, and we can very quickly see what's happening within any business, whether there's challenges, in this case, multiple payment methods, this vendor, whether it was a duplicate, whether the purchase order came in after the fact, meaning the invoice was delivered before purchase order was executed and delivered out to that firm. And again, if we find that this is potentially an issue, we simply have to click follow up, assign it to our team. This time we'll let Michael do some work for us. Again, picking a time in the future. And now Mike will get a notification telling him that there's a status open for this particular transaction. Again, reports are based specifically on the data itself. So in this case, we do standardized reports like a transaction flurry report, either by amount or transaction count, which is essentially looking at the frequency by which you're paying various vendors. And if all of a sudden the number of transactions over the same period seem to be odd, it will flag it, or the amount seems to be outside the normal realm of what you're spending. It's again going to match those. Multiple payment methods give you a list of all the vendors. So you very quickly, within the data set, have the ability to go and look at all of the information in a number of different ways. We have the ability to look at it by, as I said, vendors. But should you also give us access to the data, should you give the solution access to the data, it will also draw out for you where your user controls may be having some challenge, or where you might have users that need to get a little bit more training. Maybe Dorothy and George and McKenna all need to get a little bit more training. Maybe they just happen to be using the keypad, the number pad a little too fast. But essentially what the AI auditor does is it gives you full access to all the information that you're able to look at. And rather than have your human team of auditors, accountants, and professionals looking at the data, we're going to surface the most relevant things. And we're going to surface that in a way where you can search it, where you can put your own sort of query against it, if you think of it that way, and you can filter out and grab the things that you're concerned about. So maybe I'm worried about a particular date range. Maybe I'm worried about things over a certain dollar value. I can very quickly filter my list, see exactly what I need to do. I might want to see if the expert score is triggered, or whether this was manual entries, whether it's got an outlier. All of these are available, and I can filter them exactly how I need to filter them, and then obviously export those for further review, or do the review online. Go in, decide I want to follow this up, assign it to my right individual. So very quickly, within seconds and minutes, your team will have access to all of their financial data, very quick dashboards of the information, and the ability to start working through the data. Now, I did say that this is not a black box. It's AI for the professional. So what we do is we give you not only the ability to see in every single transaction, we give you the ability to actually go through and modify some of the things that you might want to focus on. So for instance, in my suspicious keyword, I might go down and add new things into my library. Maybe there was an issue with a customer or a vendor or a user, and I can very quickly flag those in. So I noticed that Dorothy 77 was having some issues. I'm going to add her in anytime I see that. Maybe Dorothy was making a common mistake and put in some other type of language that I wanted to have here. So maybe I want to look at something that says faulty. And throughout this, what I get the ability to do is simply change and add to the overall testing mechanisms, change the weightings, and when I do that, it will remind me that I need to go and rerun this report. So I can go do that, hit rerun, and the system will naturally take a copy and allow me to compare one to the other. So we get the full visibility of all those pieces coming through. So as I execute on that, it tells me and reminds me what type of data it is, and it's now running with those two new suspicious keywords. Again, it's looking for what I'm putting in there as part of my lexicon, and it's able to digest that. So, full flexibility and versatility in giving you all the information very quickly. And then as you start building out your audit plans, as you start building out tasks for follow-up, your accounting team and your professionals now have the ability to go in and see what we're working on. So right now I'm looking at the open list. You can see the ones that we've done today and in history. And I can go and see if there are any that have already been flagged as normal and see the entire list. So I can filter this for myself. I can go and look at anything that we've assigned to a given user and make sure that they're actually following them up. So should Stefan now log into the solution, he'll have that notification, he'll be able to go here and flag that either as normal or in fact as an issue. And it will then track that information, track any comments he puts inside the solution. So I wanted to give you that very quick overview of the AI Auditor and make sure that we got right into the product and give you a sense of exactly how the information comes in. If I just recap a couple of things from a slide perspective, and as I know right now the question and answer is open, I see some question and answers, I will come through those very quickly. But let's just talk about what we just went through. So you went through a solution that is making artificial intelligence explainable for the accounting professional. We take in all of the ledger and subledger data. We give you the ability to see it very visually from a dashboard perspective. Dashboards are different styles of reviewing the data. As I mentioned, in payables, for instance, looking at it by vendor or by user. And then as you drill into the data, you get to the details, which is the part that's behind on the right. And within that, every single entry within my transaction has been scored. It's been reviewed against all the control points. In the case of general ledger, it goes through 30 different control points. And when I click on any one of those control points down below, it highlights the rows that are affected within my transaction. It allows me to see more details if I click on the file information. And it will tell me exactly where it sees the potential issue. So this is actually one of the ones that I picked up by random and saw that there was a journal entry reversal or some type of reporting adjustment made to another transaction. So imagine in your world where you want to start looking at any transaction where there's some type of reversal, some type of change. We actually dive through your data and we look to see if any, in whole or in part, of those transactions has been modified or changed. Very hard for the human eye to process all of that information. So let the machine do it. And this is all available up in the cloud. You can sign in from anywhere you are. You can connect to that data source if it's available to you through an online connection, and you can start reviewing all of your information. Knowing that some customers and clients will have challenges to let the data exist somewhere else, either based on government regulation like HIPAA in the US or something like that, we do offer the opportunity for you to deploy this however you wish. However, we strongly urge the cloud for the sole reason that one of the things that makes the system better is that it's constantly learning. It's constantly learning if you opt in from all the client work, all the organizational work that you do as a professional, as well as all of your hundreds and thousands of friends that are already using the AI Auditor today. As mentioned right at the top, this is very much an award-winning solution. Just in 2017 alone, we've had a number of great successes here at MindBrid with the AI Auditor, with some very strong players in the tax and accounting world, like Thomson Reuters. And our goal is to democratize AI for the accounting professional, providing you exactly the type of information and insights on your data as you possibly can. And in fact, just last week, I did get a chance to update this slide. We were named from Accounting Today the top product for accounting professionals. This is a great testament to the types of things that we do here at MindBrid. We spend all of our time and energy worrying about all of the CPAs around the world doing different job functions, not having the ability to look at their data and making sure that within that data set, that data cluster, that they have all the things they need. Again, for us, we're focused on helping. One of the things that makes AI scary to most people is the amount of time and energy it takes to train and develop. The best news you have coming out of this webinar is you don't have to do that. This is what our team over at MindBrid does day in and day out. It's purpose-built, delivering value for you, pre-trained for your ledger and subsidiary ledger data. Amazing power. If you think of all the tools that you've used, including Access, Excel, and others, there's no scripting. There's no need to run the data 15 different ways to get one answer, which is this potentially an issue or not? It's all there, ready for you to go. We analyze 100% of the data that you give us. The more data you give us, the more columns you give us, the more information you give us, the more we're going to try to use it to find out if there's actually an issue or an anomaly. And we're backed by a number of professionals in your world who have helped us to tune and tweak our expert scoring system to make sure that we are showing you patterns and issues within the data as you see it. There's lots of conversation going on in the Q&A. The details of the data that we look at, if you look at General Ledger, we're looking at very simple parts of it. The more you give us, the more we analyze, but at a base requirement, transactions, by transaction, IDs, etc. Normally these are just standard reports coming out of the ERP. Payables, we need a little bit more. We need the user control list, we need the vendor master list, we need a few other files. Our success team is there, ready to hold your hand through all of these. The other thing to note about the way that we do business is we're a fully ready to go partnering solution for you. Our customer success team will do all of the onboarding with you. They will take any net new people that you bring into your organization through the same thing or refine based on the work that you're doing, types of onboarding. And they will also help you if you have any data challenges that are out there. So I know my team in the background is going to be responding to all sorts of the questions as they come up. Knowing that I don't have any more slides for your content, so I wanted to try to keep this short and sweet for you as a benefit. I'm going to leave the line open for question and answer, but I'll go right to the thank you slide. Thanking you for your time, thanking you for taking time out of a busy time of year to come and spend just a little over 45 minutes with us to understand how the AI Auditor curve works.
So what was the AI on this?
Did you see any AI on it?
I didn't see any sophisticated AI.
Exactly.
So yeah, I saw, I guess, simple AI.
Like what?
Rules-based.
improve it, but
Yeah.
that's expert system type of thing.
Right.
Oh,
Physical-
Denise, you
physical-
know these have you met Denise already?
Hello, everybody.
Yes?
Yeah.
Have you met all the babies?
Hello, babies. They're all babies still.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but only for a few months. We had just got a list of applicants.
Okay. But they're still babies until they get their PhD.
Oh, really?
Right.
Oh. No, they're only babies for the first year. Then they are
Okay.
sophomores.
Toddlers after that.
So, what was the AI thing here? I didn't understand those rules there with that.
Well, like it,
We missed the beginning. So I sent an email to Solar Angel, who kind of had a marketing of this, seeing if he can do a private one of these for us. So probably he will.
I'm surprised that they're operating on the cloud, though. I mean, I understand for the cloud that they're looking for more instances.
I think
but
they're going to compete with, what's the name, Patrick Taylor's company.
Right, but then, I mean, I'm surprised auditors and accountants would feel comfortable putting all their data on the cloud. You know, where
I
it's
don't
publicly
think
shared
many
platform.
companies are going to either let their data be put on MindBridge's cloud,
Yeah.
or the opposite. They're going to let MindBridge put the knowledge gatherer software on top of their cloud set.
Exactly.
But Taylor, what's Patrick's company name?
I forget now.
No, it's not ACL, not idea, it's the other one. They actually host.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of work for the government, and they have some T&E analytics and etc. all pre-programmed. And this sounds similar. Meaning there is no question this is a new generation of software. It doesn't feel like spreadsheet, like the way ACL and IDEA feel. Okay,
Right.
and they are not tied to legacy generations of software, so they are doing it on the cloud. They have some nice analytics. They have a whole set of analytics they will use and decide for you. And the graphics are not particularly better than Tableau.
So
Correct?
basically, it's for an auditor or accountant who doesn't want to learn how to use analytics, but just has the data, you plug it in, and the machine decides.
It's a little bit like Paul's
Or like
Super
Steve's,
App, correct?
yeah, or like Steve's application where you decide before you what tests to run and what kind of data you would need, right? So like Steve's enhanced, I guess. I mean,
So guys, was this interesting? Or you didn't understand the thing? Didn't understand the thing? So maybe we need to give you a little tutorial on this. Yeah, I missed the beginning, so
Yeah.
we couldn't hear it. So what they were doing there at the end wasn't particularly intelligent or particularly artificial. But I did like the interface, and I did like that they kind of brought it to a new paradigm. Okay, still I think there's a lot of marketing.
yeah.
Yeah, that was always my difficulty with this vendor, is that they came here and every time we asked them a question, they said we can't tell you an answer because proprietary keep wanting to talk to me, and I said this is a waste of time. So I did. So Denise, you have in your hands.
Oh, okay. Well, let me get set up here for a second.
Now, don't you dare say you don't understand Denise. You read her paper, okay?
They read the
And
paper?
she's too strong.
They asked you questions?
If
they're gonna
anyone
have great questions.
misbehaves, she beats him up.
Oh.
No, don't worry about it.
It's supposed to be a very, very informal discussion of the paper. And I hope to motivate you guys about how to handle
So
your
Denise,
own.
tell them the magic of 1, 2, 3.
Well, that's where I'm getting into that, yeah. So for those who don't know who I am, my name is Denise Applebaum. Now a doctor. I was here
Dr. Applebaum.
Yes, I graduated in May.
She's our
last
strongest
year.
PhD student by far.
Well, I was.
In many senses.
Yeah. And I was Professor Miglos's, he was my advisor during that period, and the happiest day of my life was when he put the hood over my head. My husband actually still looks at pictures and swears I look happier there than I did in my wedding picture.
I know that picture, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I know, maybe I put it on there, but Professor Miklos was tired of seeing it. But I mean,
I never get tired of seeing my PhD students graduation.
But it just goes, I mean, basically, and Professor Miklos says because, I mean, I didn't work the same way I did in the PhD program to get married. You know, so obviously, you know, it required a lot of work. And I would advise you, I mean, yes, it's good to be smart and everything, but it's really more like working, knowing how to work hard and to put yourself on a program. A lot of it you have to be very self-motivated. So, I mean, this is different than being an MBA program or regular school where you have somebody telling you what to do. The reason why you're a PhD is because you have an exploratory mind, you question why things are the way they are. So you have to have a certain amount of internal drive, you know, a sense that you want to find out, you know, the answers to certain questions, and that's what motivates your reason and why you're doing research. So I would encourage you to pursue any kind of crazy thought or ideas you have. I mean, don't be shy in the beginning. You get better, you know, after a while you learn like what sticks and what doesn't stick as an idea for research. But you know, that's where you start. So you know, it just takes a little creativity and then trying to put yourself on a disciplined program. Now this paper here is strictly a work of discipline because I had to read 572 papers and then put them in a categorizing way to categorize the papers and to reduce them down to what was actually relevant to the topic, and that took a lot of work, a lot of time. I'm putting myself in a program like 5 papers a day, read them and you know, analyze every paper. You know, this how this work goes sometimes. So, but just to
Know them how many times?
well, we have probably on a Dropbox folder. So I started working with Professor Miklos, Professor Alex. I want to say around 2014 probably. Yeah, but we were working on a paper for Auditing Journal of Practice and Theory. It was going to be a discussion piece about audit analytics, okay, and the audit profession, what the current issues should be, what we suggest should be in areas of research. And out of this, during this when we were starting to work on this paper together, my question was, okay, well, what has been the research to date, in particular in the external audit profession, you know, the public engagement, about analytic procedures or analytics? And I realized soon that there were some papers that were published, you know, around 2000, early 2000s, that were other literature reviews, but nothing had been done recently. So I identified this gap and I decided to start tackling it. And it was several iterations of different stages of literature review. First, we were looking at internal audit literature, and then we were looking at, you know, modern audit analytical literature, and then we decided to look at the whole process, like from the very beginning. But what happened is the paper morphed into this huge monstrosity that was probably, without the table, was probably easily over 100 pages. And no one wanted to review it, no one wanted to read it. I presented it several times here in this class, you know, different students, different conferences, and everyone complained about the length. It's way too long. So we decided to split it up. And actually it became 2 papers. Both are now published, and this is recently now online published. The other one was published earlier last year in the Auditing Journal of Practice and Theory journal. And actually both these papers became part of my dissertation as well. So the idea is that you want to...
3 papers.
3 papers?
Yeah.
Well...
The one we did.
At the end, right, yes. That was the other one. That was about ERP systems. But that was like a specific application of analytics and looking at how...
So if Professor Kogan hasn't been so stubborn like a mule, that paper, the continuity equation, you know which I'm talking about,
right,
would have been published 5 years earlier, and there would be a second paper. Okay, but he was so stubborn, I didn't want to fight with him, so I let it be. But the paper was just too complex for the accounting group, too complex. And we got comment like from a referee, you don't know what continuous auditing is.
You don't know, this is Godfather continuous auditing.
Yeah, but that's the kind of comment you get. And I sent it to the accounting review, and they then asked them to send it either to auditing or to system. They sent it to management account. And the guy who was the editor, associate editor, was a guy from Stanford that had no idea what we are doing. Really, no idea. And so when they changed editors, I decided to resubmit it. And they told me that they had an agreement with the prior editor that they were not going to take resubmissions. I could have easily just changed the name of the paper and sent it in again, okay? But I was so annoyed at them that I sent it to the audit journal. But if Professor Kogan had me allowed to cut the automatic error correction out of it, we would have now 2 A journals.
I could defend itself.
That was difficult because it was Michael and Alex, so,
oh, wow.
and Jiawu. So Jiawu would suffer through this.
But we went through the same challenge with this paper too. I mean, we get to the, the theory behind the External Audit Analytics framework. Trying to keep that simple. I mean, all reviewers, I got the impression none of them knew what we were talking about most of the time.
Yeah,
it was very frustrating.
Very frustrating.
And each version got worse and worse too.
No, and one thing I did in this whole thing, I said that Denise came first, they're all going to get it, and they did.
Yeah.
When we got like the 4th back of this one, Denise was pretty upset.
Yeah, well, because like every time we do we weren't addressing everything they asked every time. It's part of the problem. But then when the 4th one came back, the editor said, well, we're not going to go back to the reviewers, but this is what I want. So, I mean, I was thinking, well, why didn't he just tell us up front that's what he wanted, instead of waiting until
because
before
he didn't know. We relied on editing. And at that time, Denise said, oh, let's argue about this. Remember the thing? I said, don't argue, just cut it off.
That's one thing I'm learning.
So she might have a 4th paper out of this.
Yeah, so the whole methodology, in literature review, actually I discovered this process going through this paper that's very, very handy for this very definite outline about how to approach a systematic or structural review.
And these are good journals, meaning IJGERS is arguably one of the best journals in the AIS. Audit Journal is the best journal in auditing, and JAL is a mixed journal from different fields and is a very good journal.
Although it's interesting, I found out yesterday in my school, they consider Audit Journal to be a high elite journal, up there with CAR and JAR. They consider the CPA journal to be an elite journal. Then they consider JAL to be highly recommended. It's not as high as a CPA journal.
So let me know.
But they working on CPA journal, right?
From some article.
Yeah, I know.
We just need to figure out what we do.
And that's the other thing too. It's like know how your school, where we end up teaching on how they rank different papers. Because I was thinking this could be a higher ranked paper.
It's very different.
And it wasn't. The CPA journal is higher ranked. I think
this whole journal ranking thing is stupid in this day and age. Meaning, I just got the accounting review, the latest issue. Just have a look what's in there.
Well, the president of my current school was saying yesterday at the meeting, they had a problem with the whole journal paradigm because here the school paid these huge fees to subscribe to these journals, and then you have to pay, I guess, to actually submit papers in there, and so you're paying double on both sides of the equation.
Well, you don't have to pay for submit journals.
Yeah, even the AAA, most of them.
That's a
yeah, right.
$400.
Right.
But you know what happened there? Philip, how much did they wanted in that journal to publish that article?
I think Professor Hassan said 15,000.
Louder.
Professor Hassan said 15,000.
They wanted $15,000.
Well, that's for open access, probably. If you want to make it open access. Now, the problem is if you don't do that, then it's almost impossible to get a copy of the paper. I know other journals had published in IJIS was the same way. They wanted to charge us $15,000 to make it open access.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. the best thing to do is just, grab an early copy of it from the publisher, look at it to you, and then, publish it however you want, like on ResearchGate or academia. So how many of you have published a paper yet? Or the process of publishing a paper? You two, I expect, right?
You have paper published, right?
Yeah, in process.
Oh, good. Where at?
HR.
Okay. About what?
Our contract for audit.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that's our new approach. If we find something that is very, very innovative, I'm always afraid that someone steals the idea, so we'll get it into a lesser journal fast, and then we do a better article.
Yeah.
That's what we did in Process Mind and Work.
I mean, so do you guys have ideas of what you're interested in, or what areas you want to conduct research on, or how you want to frame your future studies yet?
Philip is going to be looking into predictive analytics in the drug industry, correct?
In the drug industry?
Yeah, because tell her about the database.
Okay.
It's called IMS, and it's the Hassan in the faculty here.
Okay.
In pharmaceuticals, and it's a database with every drug sale in the United States.
Really?
Prescription drugs. Very interesting. You might be interested in that.
Yeah.
Look. Don't mention data she starts doing.
So it's like a mix of textual data, or is it strictly?
We have to figure out what to ask the database, correct? And keep Hassan out of it so we can do something interesting. So not out of it, but
yeah. Any other research in progress going on? Don't let it.
yes.
Yeah.
Tell them what the
Yeah.
guys
I
are
want to learn more about what you guys are doing first.
Just like in the project, like related with RPA.
Okay.
So I'm going to do a research on this, and also I'm interested in smart contract. Like, so Andrea will be my, instructor on this.
And she's very confused this weekend. She was very confused.
This week, no, and because the project is about the employee benefit plan audits, and
Okay.
so I'm trying to put EBP plan audits on the smart contract. I'm
Oh.
trying to do that, but now we are working together to build up a framework for the RPA for
Okay.
the EBP audits.
I didn't say what you are. Your phone call with what's his name?
Oh, Dr. Burns. Yeah, I just had a phone call with the director of the veteran system, which traces the invoices and transactions.
Oh, Van Clovis.
Oh, right, yeah, Clovis, yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
We are discussing about how could we manage VAT and value added taxes
Right.
by utilizing blockchain. And the problem here is that the blockchain could not fit with the traditional blockchain structure, so we want to modify the blockchain which could fit the need of the governments and also tax authorities, and also for the actually also for the company, because it should have to be beneficial to the company.
So how does the blockchain, how does it have to be modified?
Actually,
Is it too complex? Take too long? The transactions, or?
the transaction, like, because the one problem is that those kind of transactions in the intra-industry
Right.
transactions, trades, those could be also like private companies, like secrets, like corporation secrets, and also like for the government, they also need some kind of factor to trace and monitor those things. So, like the secret ledger technology, that's like those kind of private information to be reviewed for other like companies. So there should be some kind of Chinese wall embedded in those blockchain secret ledgers, and also for the government there should be another layers at which they could access to those kind of information.
So you're saying basically the public-private, peer-to-peer needs to have some kind of
That's right.
access controls.
Yeah.
you know, even the phone call with the World Bank.
No.
Well, we had a phone call with the World Bank because they're interested in using blockchain for public interest and
Right.
financial reporting.
Right.
Or I guess financial reporting for the public interest.
Okay, right.
So we'll have more to come with that, but I think they wanted to start looking at, I think they want to learn, first of all, how blockchain works, like they want a workshop, and then I guess talk about how we can have different types of smart contracts on blockchain.
They want to lead from technology.
Right.
They want to say countries like Poland, Uzbekistan, okay, they were talking about it, should be able to use blockchain technology for increasing public information, transparency. So instead of going to the traditional way to do it, they would put it all in. And that's why I wanted him to talk in Spanish. Spanish is the Brazilian part, and they have what is Confi? Yeah, and they have like 9 different types of electronic data they collect from government organizations and from basically purchase orders, electronic purchase orders, but they don't have it on blockchain. And the reason I wanted you to talk to Paul is to begin with, maybe he'll get interested on putting Spanish on a blockchain. And it will get involved, and we will do some smart contracts with that.
They want to make it blockchain because if they make it blockchain, then they could trace from the origin.
Right.
For all this. For the tax authorities, they want it. But the problem is that how will they persuade the companies?
Right.
Because it's an extra cost to them. Because before that, for making inspection and also like those kind of filter systems, the company had to pay a lot for establishing those kind of systems here. But if they want to establish this blockchain here, the company has to also like
I mean, on the next phone call, make sure I'm available. Okay, I just wanted you to know him, to meet him.
Look at the computer cost probably, and also
So tell
the power.
you tell him what you are doing.
Yeah.
I'm working through 3 projects so far, but my research this summer I'm proposing to do automating audit procedures using blockchain and smart contracts. That's my summer research, I developed the idea after working with a project called Rutgers to automate the audit procedures. So I came up with the idea, I developed the idea, and
If you guys need ideas for summer projects, come and talk to us. We have too many. We have too many ideas.
Yeah.
And you are doing the thing with Richard Dow. Have you already talked to him?
Yes, I have. It's an interesting contract. Right now we have progress on it.
So tell them what it is.
Yeah.
Oh yes, in every tax year, the non-profit organizations have to fill out the Form 990, right?
The taxes, right.
Yes, and those information are publicly available online.
Right.
In each XML file, a record for each organization. So our goal is to build a database, one database to include all of the form information. I mean all of the XML files information
Right.
is in one database so that we can do future research topics on that database.
So put a receptacle 90s together and say,
Yeah.
some intelligent analysts.
As I say, yeah, or like a complicated application.
Yeah.
tools.
You know, Rich Dow, Professor Dow, University of West Virginia, is he did a lot of visualization stuff, etc.
Yeah.
His wife, however, was in PNY and is still a consultant for not-for-profit. So she knows a lot about that stuff.
Right.
And so he called me and said that would we be interested in working with him. So that's why Wu is working.
Oh,
with him.
okay.
Okay, go ahead. Andy.
Okay,
Sorry.
let me get started.
We want to hold you back.
Yeah, so anyway, this is the literature review that was part of this original paper I must tell you that we have probably like 200 versions of our Dropbox folder. When we first had this big long paper and then split off into these two sub-papers, and then we actually published another paper that was an offshoot of it. And so this paper is fit in the process either as part of my dissertation or as a first paper, or also as submitted this in September 2016, being revised by 4 times, and then the final revision with the editor. So I feel like I've been living this paper for a long time. So somebody
Not that long.
Really? Okay, I thought it was a long time.
The monkey equation paper was 10 years and 7 months.
Oh wow.
So,
That's a long time.
And the process mining paper was that because I got the review was 3 years and 4 months.
Oh wow. Okay, let's then I take that back. Retract that statement. But to me, it was the longest I'd worked on a paper without getting accepted. So it was, new process. So this is, I just wanted to show you the abstract here. It's very important when you're writing a paper to identify the question. There's got to be a research issue. Who is it interesting to? Who would be interested in this topic besides yourself? Okay, and then also identifying basically how you contribute to literature, or what are you doing to contribute to academic thought in this area. So, like I said, we started this paper on discussing the issues with suggested areas of research or where the profession needs to move using analytics and external audit process. And like I said, we realized that there wasn't a comprehensive survey out there about this topic in academic literature. But it's a basic boo-boo, because basically before we start saying, well, this is what the profession needs to do, what the profession needs to do about that, we need to know where the profession has thought about it already. What has the previous thought been about using AI in the audit process, for example, or expert systems? You think but maybe there's more out there than we realize. So this started, I thought maybe I'd come up with 90 papers, it's hard to say. I started getting into it and realized that there was hundreds of papers I was going to have to review, and actually turned out to be 301 papers in total, and mid-50s that are pertaining to this topic, which is really surprising when you think about it, because we look at how limited the analytics are that are actually used in the audit process, at least on the audit engagement side. Now you're aware of the differences between internal and external auditing, right? So external auditing is done by independent auditors of publicly traded companies on the stock market. They're required to have independent audits of their financial statements, and they're very restricted in terms of what the processes and the guidelines for doing the audit. Now the audit regulations don't really restrict the use of analytics, but engagement companies are there's economic reasons, there's also regulatory fears about not following like what's been tried and true today so far with sampling and using very basic, more descriptive statistics. So we were surprised to see in our paper that even though the practice has been very conservative, there has been quite an extensive amount of research done already in different types of audit procedures, but there still has a lot more to be done if you look at it in the context of where analytics are today in the business world. So this paper did 2 things. We're trying, first of all, to take a scope, a series, to see what was out there already, and then secondly, to sort of place that research in the context of where business analytics, which are the audit engagement clients, where they are today. Okay, so where does this research fit into where business analytics are currently in practice? Because that's the reality. It's where we are as a profession. We're not back in the 70s or the 50s. We're here in 2018, and businesses are going about their business processes in a different way. So how do we go about applying this analytic research into this particular business network, business environment? So, but just to review, typically we start off looking at the basic framework of the audit procedure. This is most firms will use this type of process. This is what's taught in most audit classes. The decision-making pre-engagement phase, you either decide to keep on with the same client, or you are actually going after a new client. So there's a certain amount of research that you would expect to be done at this phase, either exploratory, looking at the reputation of the company, what you've heard in industry, It could be industry-based knowledge also that we'd have to acquire. So we would expect some exploratory analytics in this phase. Then we have the planning phase, and this is based on once we have the engagement, we understand the client to some degree, initial understanding where we expect to see the risks of the audit. Then we have the compliance assessment and testing, which is where we see most of the sampling occurring, and basic reviews of three-way matching, duplicate testing, gap analysis, looking at these are very straightforward types of ratio analysis tests that are performed. Then we would evaluate the results and review them based on our expectation models that we've developed in the planning phase about what we expected to see and whether our sensitive testing confirmed those or not. Then we report the analytics or our results of our audit review to the public, in the report. And this is also an area which has been under going through a lot of change right now too, because the public is saying, well, we have these clients that can get all this very extensive data, and basically you're still giving the same carte blanche, basic, very undescriptive boilerplate review, which the question remains, so how can it be more informative? Why can't we get more information about this client than what is currently being offered? So the PCAOB is requiring, after 4 or 5 years of going back and forth with comments and reviews, they decided finally to say that auditors should now disclose only who the partner is on the audit engagement, but also what were the issues the auditor may face during that engagement process. Critical audit matters. So it's not quite what we expect in terms of analytics, but it's helpful. It's a step in the right direction. So then we also have continuous activities, which are basically ongoing analyses with interim testing that go on between the period of the year-end process. And this is our basic audit process of an external audit engagement. So usually most of the companies will follow something very similar to this, but not exactly the same. And most of the, this is an illustration here, a small table of the type of analytics we're looking at. Primarily we're looking at sampling, very straightforward ratio analyses. We build expectation models based on ratio analyses and evaluation of the quantitative data. There's very little work done outside of this very narrow domain. This is typically what, if you look at any audit textbook, this is pretty much what they teach you as analytical procedures. So that's very restricted in scope, right? Compared to what we think of it, analytics, right? And I was surprised, yes, we expect, because of this, we would expect a lot of literature to be about this particular range of analytics, but there was a surprising number of papers that went beyond that. So this paper is basically discussing that whole process of discovering this other literature, plus all the literature that we could find on analytical procedures and audit, then also how we could apply that to the modern audit engagement in the current business environment. So literature reviews have to be done very methodically. The biggest part is actually finding all the literature. Okay, so that takes some time. And a lot of this basically start with some papers. I start with a list that was generated by the AAA audit committee. They analyzed all the auditing literature they could find. So I started with that and taking all the papers that were extracted from that database, and then looking all the reference lists of those papers. So it's really like a detective. You're following a trail, many different trails, trying to pull out all the papers that might be relevant, reviewing them, and I had a master data list for that particular list of papers. And then I started reducing or whittling down the papers based on qualification. So we had the search process for looking at keyword searches, looking for different kind of words, also looking at the papers themselves and the text body itself for different analytical procedures, external audit. Examples of the papers had to be external audit in a context. So could it be internal audit? It had to be external audit. Okay, or public company engagement, audit engagement process, independent auditor. All these were types of phrases that were initially used. And then also the audit engagement, of course, I said had to be in an external audit environment. Analytical procedures obviously had to be mentioned. Now, they may not be the prime reason for the paper. There were a lot of behavioral papers which used analytical procedures as part of the testing method that contributed to the results. So that was also considered to be a paper that has a secondary access, a secondary mention of analytical procedures. Then of course they had to be published, okay, so that was other criteria. So I'm sure there's plenty of papers out there that I wasn't able to find or know about because they weren't published. So that was the other criteria. So I'm not trying to say that I found all the literature out that was ever available on this topic, but what's been published that that's been in a publicly peer-reviewed journal. There also we had to look and see that I extracted looking at what kind. Some papers had different phases, and there should be internal controls, and we had the number of papers based on where they mentioned. So we had some papers talk about judgment, independent bias, and experience. There were 60 papers in that area. Then there was detect earnings, misstatements, and management fraud. There were 28 papers. Fraud detection. So external auditors still do look at fraud detection. That was 14 papers. Public concern bankruptcy evaluation. That was top for 18 papers. Then also for evaluation processes, there were 4. So we looked at the subtopics as well. So looking at some of the results here, you can see the number of papers here, this table here, number of analytical papers per year. So this is about analytical procedures every 5 years. Now, originally I had them every year. The editor was a little upset about the long tables, the long charts and graphs. So he asked me to consolidate all the numbers into 5-year increments. It actually worked out better because that way I could cut off in 2015. And I plan to update the database on 2020. So then we also looked at the number of the paper types, whether they're behavioral papers, conceptual, analytical, or archival. Most of them obviously were behavioral because being auditing tends to be more, most of the research in auditing tends to be behavioral. Not all of it, but a lot of it is. So we're not surprised by that finding. We also have, looking at the number of papers per phase, it's expected, yes, okay, we're not going to see too many probably in the reporting phase. And continuous activities had 0 papers. Okay, so some of that audit phase we saw earlier had no research, very minimal research. Of course, we expect to see it in the areas that are required by the standards, such as audit planning, and also the review process, and also the substantive audit procedures, because that's where auditors will conduct more analytical procedures in general. So then looking at the types of analytics we saw, this is, like I said, this is exploratory, so as we found papers, we had to find a way to categorize what we were finding. So I didn't approach this with the idea that I would have 5 different types of analytics that sort of evolved over time. So obviously we had lots of an audit examination type, ratio analysis, like we saw typically, classically in the audit literature. Regression, we saw a surprising number of papers with regression processes. Supervised learning, supervised processes were also large. Other statistics were sort of like the basket for all the other types of statistical methods, and then unsupervised was also in there. So we were surprised at this point to see, almost half and half of, in terms of the traditional type of analytical procedures, and then the more forward-looking types of analytical procedures. So this presented an issue to us of how do we understand this literature now? Why is it that perhaps the audit profession is not using more of these types of techniques in the audit process, which is the subject of the other paper? But it's amazing to see that there's been all this research in these areas already to date. It's still not enough. Now this table here is just sideways in the paper as published right now. So I turned it around so we could see it. So what I did then is I identified by the technique type. Okay, so we have an audit phase of the engagement planning, substantive compliance testing, review, opinion phase, and continuous activities. The type of process, so whether it's audit examination, unsupervised, supervised, identified every technique that it fell under, and then gave you a number of the papers. Okay, so this was a suggestion by one of the reviewers over many of the times I presented this paper in various formats, and they suggested it would be very helpful to have a breakdown by paper type, and then looking at the engagement. And also, this is sort of the foundation also of the framework that comes later. By the way, if you have any questions about this, as I'm going on, please stop me and ask me the question, okay? So, yeah.
Did you classify them by the keywords, or you summarize
Every single paper.
I actually was thinking about that, what you just said, thinking, Vicky did this whole dissertation on bibliometrics. She got a job paper in it. And I was wondering if using text mining.
I thought about that too. It's like, but the problem is like,
maybe you need to engage Vicky and maybe you.
Well, that's why I have access to this software called Indivo at school.
I heard about it.
It's great. I mean, I have Indivo Plus. I'm starting to work on other projects right now using the text mining.
And I think Raj is going to be here, I think, March 8th, 9th. We should talk to him about using the SQL engine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only problem about literature reviews is like, right now it's like basically you have to, you do a quick search, but you also have to go back and sort of really read the paper before you decide, well, this paper qualifies or doesn't qualify. So I've had one sentence in there talking about audit engagement process to see whether it really applied. If it did, then I put the paper in. For example, there were some sampling papers that never mentioned auditing. Never mentioned, there was, it would be like the audit journal, but it was about one of the sampling techniques, and there's no mention of the audit per se.
Like
so that didn't qualify.
People used to ask me if IT had anything to do with auditing.
Yeah.
How many decades I went through this whole thing. What you do has nothing to do with accounting.
Yeah, so I mean, but so I had to be very strict about it, and then you go back. So I can't tell you the times I go back and look at the papers again to make sure I didn't miss something. And it's not fail-proof. You're right. I mean, there's human error, so I tried to. And then Professor Alice looked at my results also. I mean, everything was available on a shared Dropbox file. All the papers are there. And so he and I argued for a long time about like how to classify certain techniques. Because some of them obviously have multiple classifications. So where to put them in the bucket finally was always a big challenge. But actually the paper ended up being more of a summary level in terms of how we categorize the techniques because of the nature of trying to publish something. That was a big battle with this whole project, was trying to get this immense research into something that was publishable, that wouldn't scare the publisher with the size of the paper. And that's why like a lot of the tables were online, because they don't want, no one's going to publish 60 pages of tables. Or, that was just the one, that's the results table, not even other.
Yeah. I got to that 3/4 of paper I get in JPEG. At the end, if they are going to be published, I tell them to cut it down.
Yeah.
Because what usually happens, people repeat a lot of things. Professor Kogan said repeat 1, 2 is good, 3 is good. I don't like it that much. And the other thing is people tend to reverberate on topics. And when you force them to squeeze the paper becomes better.
Yeah.
Because then they don't you agree?
Yeah, I feel like when we're reading this paper now, I mean, it's always good to, like, I criticize and back to it, but seeing what Robert Sneckel told us to do, I think the paper is much better, although I was upset that we took out the research methodology process and everything. But actually, it reads easier. The big challenge we had, even with the reviewers, is they didn't understand the paper, they were struggling with it. And people had got into the EAA theory part.
It happens very often that people finish dissertations, they can't even see it anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's very bad because that's the paper you need to get in fast. And so, meaning I think you got to disappoint that you barely could see it anymore.
Oh, I know. It's like, I got the notice in the morning at 9 o'clock in the morning, or right before our meeting, actually on Tuesday. I was drinking champagne. As soon as the meeting was over, I didn't care if it was morning. I was like, I couldn't believe I published finally, It was like, almost like a dissertation. I had this sticking feeling I was going to get rejected at the end. And I'm going to share with you guys that it's out of a year since my graduation, and all 3 chapters of my dissertation are published. So that's the way you want to do it. It's like as soon as you get a chapter done, like it may not be the same version of what you have in your dissertation, but get it out there to a publisher.
Yeah, and that's what we have tried recently to do. In the old days, you had the subscription of the accounting review, you had the jar, and etc. Today, that's not the way people find articles. It's Google Scholar. They go in there and go by topic.
Right.
No one says end accounting review.
Right.
No one does that. That's not the way it's actually, I would love to use Google Trends and find out how people search for articles.
That'd be interesting, yeah. That's a
Yeah,
good
for you
idea, yeah.
or for Vicky.
Yes, we would work together on that. Because what's going to happen, like I'm going through this process now at my school. So you have to, well, it is my school, I have to substantiate every year for them to keep me on a research track. So I have to learn, I've had to like basically learn all about tracking all the citations. I'm learning about creating all my profiles everywhere. And it seems like you really want to keep your pipeline active. You know,
That's
so,
something actually someone should teach all of us.
Yeah.
And there are some people that manage, you know, who's very good at that. David Wood.
very, very good. But in fact, that Ron, my chair in my department told me the other day that our at Montclair, their numbers went up with David Woods because they hired me in my research now. Yeah, it went up.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah,
Sure.
to keep you on.
Although Sylvia publishes quite a lot.
Yeah, yes, she does.
And Ron.
Ron does. Jim DeGabriel is a very big evaluation.
I don't know. Jim.
He has like some tars and jars actually. So you have to start thinking about that. So as soon as you get one idea down, a paper, even if it's a little rough, I mean, have professors
And
look
particularly
at
you
it.
guys in accounting, you are going to get advice from Suresh or whoever saying, oh, you have to, when you're going out of here, get an A and etc. It's bad idea. Bad idea because you are here 4 years. 2 years you are learning. 2 years you have time to put a paper. You won't have an A by the time you go out.
No.
You know, he said that to Selena, so it's not, I'm not making this up. Better that you get a couple of good papers in, okay, having 2 or 3 revisions already in.
Yeah.
Or you go like, meaning not everyone can do it in ease. But we have been doing good.
Well, actually, like first paper Steve and I published was 2014 with Manager Auditing Journal. I was still in the first 2 years. We worked on a project. The other thing, so whenever you do a project, try to think of how you can write a paper. And then Professor Nicholas talks about it all the time, but you really want to start thinking about, okay, what's interesting about this project that could contribute to the profession or that'd be interesting to who, or whatever. So identify the questions we saw in the abstract of that project and write a paper about it.
And
it's all part of the process of doing the
and they are setting high standards. Denise, June, and Sophia.
Right.
Yeah, they are putting a lot of papers in. Problem is no one wants to leave the New York area.
I know.
Or we would be in much better schools. No one wants to leave.
Well, I had marital restrictions.
Yeah, well, Sophia too.
Yeah. Oh, really? She didn't tell me that.
Huh?
I thought that she was open to going anywhere. Not really, no, okay.
No, Sophia too, and Chow could go to another place.
Yeah.
And each one of them.
Me too, yeah.
Differently had their husband.
Yeah. I had the same problem, yeah. Well, not a problem, but it's a restriction. Qualification. No, actually, I have very smart. I said, you know, well, go where you want to go, but realize that I won't be able to work my company, I'll devote my company, I won't be able to manufacture the way I need to manufacture. So you're going to deal with a frustrated, bored husband on your hands who has been asking, where are you going? What are you doing? What's in the mail there? What came from Amazon?
Can go anywhere we want as far as it is in New York.
Exactly. So I said, you know something, I think you're going to stay right here. We're going to stay right here so you can be very busy, occupied with your profession.
And for EIS, there is advantage of being around Rutgers is good for publications. So that
yeah.
is
So I'm in arms like the Professor Nicholas still.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, I'm sure if you are somewhere else, we would still have a Tuesday calls, but.
Well, it's better to be here close by.
Yeah.
So I can come by and talk to you guys as often as we want. So going back to the paper here, we had some audit examination. Obviously, we had different techniques that were identified. These are summary types of techniques because of the space concerns. We had the regression techniques, so I had to lump them into seasonal, time series, log regression, linear regression. Now, obviously, this is very dumbed down. I mean, so because there was a complaint about all the regression techniques, it was very confusing. So we tried to summarize it in a fashion that would be a little more understandable. Then, of course, there's supervised methods. The big one, of course, was the predictive process discovery for the supervised. Clustering is a big one. Unsupervised, I'm sorry. Then also for unsupervised Bayesian theory. So that was a whole big lump of different types of techniques there. Expert systems is also large. So that's how we broke down these processes here. Then of course we have Bedford's Law was getting some attention, and because of Mark Greeney's work and other papers. Descriptive statistics was huge because that's a basic process that was included in some papers. Now some papers have more than one technique type, so those would be counted twice in this part. Okay, so some papers would discuss 4 or 5 methods. So that would mean that you would have that paper in 4 or 5 different categories. You have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, when you did your search, did you restrict it to, I don't know, HABT, decision support systems, or did it include journals like the International Journal of African Studies?
Well, I went to finance, economics, accounting, auditing, business processes. There was a broad scope. In fact, I can pull up the other. This is Appendix A. We have.
Journal of Obscure Studies.
I can't get this to exit.
I was asking this for one of
The one thing is that these topics actually finish up coming up mainly in our journals anyway. Yeah, meaning, and you would even recognize it in the Brazilian journal because of that different word.
So this is like we provided here in Appendix A, a basic categorization of the different types of techniques, and I gave a small little tiny definition, because of, this was a last minute adjustment. We looked at the different types of data, whether it's affirmative, statistical, quantitative, qualitative, whether it's predictive, prescriptive analytics, or descriptive. This is like a basic, so this is more or less for people, most readers to understand the type of techniques in literature. And we had behavioral papers here, conceptual papers, archival papers per year. Okay, these are all the journals we found papers in, and the number of papers were found from each journal. So obviously we're expecting
about 10 more minutes.
Oh, we went? Okay, I'm sorry. Let me go through this.
Emphasize what you think is.
Okay.
Give them some advice.
Okay, well, I mean, I won't get into a lot of the theory and everything, but basically the important thing is, okay, so not only did I analyze literature in terms of providing an overall survey, but we tried to see how it could be fit in a different way. So looking at it in the scope or the context of current business analytics practice, because external auditors are auditing business clients, right? Business clients using different types of analytical techniques. So what can auditors do? How can they apply these same type of techniques in the audit engagement? So using the literature, we surveyed where this has occurred already, where literature, the research has occurred already, and where it could go based on business analytics. So going back to this paper here, this is the framework we developed where the checks where we found like any kind of literature about that topic, the shaded areas where we suggest that future research needs to occur. Either it's an area that requires more research, or the more research questions about using that particular analytic type in engagement. So to review real quickly, we have the phases here. Okay, so each row is one of the phases. Then we have the types of orientation. So in business analytics, we have descriptive, we have predictive, and prescriptive. Then we have audit engagement process period or phase. So this is it's like a three-way analytic here in terms of a three-way framework in terms of how each section that we're looking at. So here, for example, we're saying in the opinion formulation phase, there was research already in other statistics in this particular predictive area, but we need more. Okay, so this is basically how we sort of pulled together all the research we conducted already, and then we extrapolated towards what we anticipate to be a reasonable expectation where we might want to see more analytics in the audit engagement based on the capabilities of these analytics and what kind of data we have available, and also with the constraints or the challenges of the audit phases. So we also then broke it down further here. So another way of looking at the same topic, and this type of table has been used a couple of times now in this paper, but also the one with Yan. It's a little bit different because this is about audit engagement. But basically it's the same thing, but we're looking at we break it down by the category of the different types of analytical types, descriptive, then we put those all together by audit phase and technique type. So that's more detailed analysis of the framework. So now I want to show you real quickly Appendix B. Has anybody seen the online appendixes yet? Of A and B? Okay. So this is the A. Like I said, this is all the journals. Now I took the same type of format you saw there. This is like to identify the paper numbers. And where do the numbers come from? This is the big table. Okay, I'll show that to you in a second. And this is the table 9. So
Can you imagine you change one insert of paper and to change all those numbers?
Yeah. Well, these are
Trying to convince Denise to use captions in her word papers.
Well, the problem, what messed me up though, like when I was moving things around, I forgot I was cutting and pasting, messing up all of your referencing. So I would have all these error messages all the time because I would move my captioning all the time. So I learned the hard lesson that you can't cut and paste your caption. You have to copy it, then you can cut out the other piece, but you can't cut and paste directly.
So I'm curious about how did you keep all the papers? Did you create a database for?
Yes, we have a database on Dropbox. Plus, I hate to confess this, but I also have 4 or 5, at least like 4 big storage bins. No, well, I'm very neurotic about it because I would have hard copies. Plus, there's also. I kill some trees with this paper, but I have records of all the papers that were reviewed. Notations on them. Plus, every paper is available on the Dropbox. We have multiple versions of all the signature papers are on there as well. Plus, and also there's a big long Excel table too as well. It's been condensed to this thing here. So this is very much a summary level table here.
So it's a database like MySQL kind of thing.
Right now, still in Excel. Yeah. But what I should do is clean it up a little bit because it's sort of messy. Not the table itself, but there's other files and stuff floating around. I should make a public version probably, right? No? Okay. Well, I want to update it though. Then the process, like every 5 years, I'm going to update this research.
The problem with sequels are not difficult to publish.
I know.
Need to pick up another angle.
Okay.
Maybe the text mounting.
That's a good idea. I'm starting to get involved with that more.
If we overwrite the paper somewhere, which use the text mining to pick up the
Yeah, that's.
Well, that's a big area right now, right?
Yeah. And there are now technologies, word processing technology, text mining technologies that we used to call in the labs vague context understanding. Is not parts of speech, is not statistical, and not big uterus matching. Somewhere in the middle. And these are the ones that are useful. This is a big way, for example, Siri or Alexa. And so maybe you can do some text understanding there of certain degree.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a new area, I think, because
yeah, it's a new area. No one has done that. Pretty sure. No one has done smart contract and auditing except the data coming out in February, correct?
Wow, congratulations. Your first paper?
Yeah.
Wow.
There are many to follow actively.
Yeah.
Many to follow.
Very hard.
So do you all have to write a paper for this class?
They have to write a paper.
Oh, good. Well, submit it to a publisher, okay? Think about that.
Well, there is a couple of papers from this class that were published.
Okay.
And I think Yui and Tiffany have one kind of in process.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Well, not accepted, but we are working on it.
And I heard that Ian's got one going on someplace today.
Huh?
Ian's published, I think he's submitting someplace. Ian? Oh, no.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But a molas would be faster than that.
Oh no. Or snail.
So I think we need to finish up.
Okay. So I thank you for your time.
So guys, let's thank the bees for coming.
We're going to get to the nuts and bolts of the theory and everything, but it was good to talk and catch up with each other, and hopefully I motivated you to expand on your ideas, even, explore it, whatever thought you, question you have. It's not a waste of time. That's part of being a PhD is that you have this questioning mind, right? And that's how you find new theories and new ideas. So, most of it was just assume that the analytical procedures were already reviewed in literature, but it wasn't. So, to the degree that we did. So, you never know. Sometimes the obvious things are not, that have not been published.
Publication is not the good things get published, the bad things don't get published.
Right.
There is a big random factor in it. And one best things I ever did was very early in my career was a comparison of value line and CompuStat. Very useful, came out in Foster's financial statement analysis book, but I had not of it for the publishing it. Rashad was editor of Accounting Review for 6 years, gave me a very hard time. And then I just got fed up and didn't do it. And David, my co-author, David Yang, finished up, decided to publish it and published it in the database journal. So never know what happens.
Yeah.
Never know. But I think that little lesson about David Yang is important. Don't leave papers unfinished sitting in your desk. If the paper has some value, get it published even in a minor journal. Someone might read it and get very interested in it. When you come out for tenure, it's good filler.
Yeah.